Heard of a church in Georgia that, you know how we publish sometimes our sick list? They published a sick list, and next to they put the name on there, and then they put a very brief description of maybe what they needed to be prayed for. And as they went down the line, they noticed by the name, this one name, it said this, pain in the neck. So I think sometimes that could be said about all of us, but we need to try not to be a pain in the neck to the congregation. Wouldn't you agree? We're on about the 8th or the 9th in this series, so we've survived so far. Maybe we can make it to the end here. We're looking at the unity by the idea of cooperating in a world which is really in a fallen state. We need to learn how to cooperate biblically. I want to talk just real quick, just kind of as introductory real quick here about there needs to be a language of words that commit to cooperation. You may not be aware of it, but sometimes your words betray your heart, that we need to speak words that sound like we're really for unity and really for cooperation. What you say out of your mouth may suggest what you have said to others about what you really want may not be true because of the way we talk about it. Look at 1 Corinthians 12, just briefly. Church cooperation requires words of unification. You need to say things that sound like that. Words matter. It says there, the body is not one member but many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I am not of the body, is it therefore not of the body? Be careful what you say. Your words need to speak unification. More than that, your words need to suggest submission to the Father on this idea of unification. When he says in verse 17 in that same text, if the whole body were an eye, where would be the hearing? If the whole were hearing, where would be the smelling? See, God built the body, not you, not me, but now God has He set the members, each one of them in the body, just as He pleased. We need to surrender to that. And if they were all one member, where would the body be? But now, indeed, there are many members, yet one body. So this idea of, well, I don't think you're, or I don't think you should be, or I don't care about you, that's out. We need to speak words of submission to the Father. It doesn't matter if a person is a problem or a pain in the neck. We need to speak words of cooperation and submission to the Father. The next little concept I want you to see in these words is church cooperation requires words of mediation, not controversy, but mediation. It says in verse 21, and the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you. Nor again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. No, much rather, those members of the body which seem to be weaker are necessary. So you look at somebody and you say, I don't know if they're even a Christian. I know they attend here occasionally, but are they really who they claim to be? You don't need to be talking like that. You're to speak words of mediation. Of course they're a Christian. Of course they're a faithful member of the kingdom. And then the fourth little thing I want you to see here is that church cooperation requires words of appreciation. If you want to learn to cooperate, you got to learn to say, thank you, and I appreciate you, and I'm so grateful for you. Listen to what it says in verse 23. Those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, on these we bestow greater honor. Instead of saying what we think they're worth, we say better than what we think they're worth, and our unpresentable parts of greater modesty. We cover up parts of our body not because we don't care about those parts, but because we are actually honoring those parts. But our presentable parts have no need, but God composed the body, having given greater honor to that part which lacks. I don't need anybody to come to me and say, oh, you got the most beautiful hands in the world. Who cares about what your hands look like? Really, couldn't care less what your hands look like. I know some of you women care about your hands, but I don't care about your hands. Sorry. So appreciation. Learn to appreciate them, though. So the people that seem to be less valuable say, hey, you're so important to me. Then the last little word here, this is important. We're not into the lesson, but this is really important. This is about your speech. Church cooperation requires words of compassion. We need to be compassionate in what we say about each other. And this is about anybody that even claims the name of Christ. Anybody that claims the name of Christ. Be careful how you speak about those people. It says here in verse 25 that there should be no schism, no division in the body, but that the members should have the same care one for another. You should love them as much as anybody. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Those are the kind of words. So be careful how you speak about anybody that claims to be a follower of Christ. Be careful. Speak more cautiously and more reverently. What are the obvious church cooperative activities, though, that unite us? And we're going to look at three. There's just three. I'm not going to take all day. And by the way, I want to say, this is not to prove authority to do these things. People are mistaken about their understanding of authority. Listen to me, you Church of Christ people, listen to me real clearly. A lot of what you argue for authority is not about authority, it's about obedience. Quit thinking that we have authority to do these things. These are things what we're compelled to do. You don't need the authority to do this. You've been ordered to do what I'm going to talk about today. So quit saying, well, I have the authority to. You don't have authority to do much anything except do what the Lord tells you to do. That's what you need to do. Quit thinking, oh, we are authorized. We have authority. We don't have an authority. Quit talking. You don't even talk like that. That's not even appropriate. Okay, number one. Let's be united by the cooperation of churches in our charities. I'm going to just focus on this first verse, even though there's quite a few here that I'd like for you to read in your own time. And in these days, prophets came from Jerusalem to Antioch. Then one of them named Agabus stood up and showed by the Spirit that there was going to be a great famine throughout all the world, which also happened. It's another one in the days of Claudius Caesar. That's a different record. Verse 29, then the disciples, each according to his ability, determined to send relief to the brethren dwelling in Judea. They also did, and sent it to the elders by the hands of Barnabas and Saul. Here's the interesting thing. It's a church, different church, not Jerusalem, these different churches across the world. And I could read all of these scriptures, but they're right there in front of you. You can read them all. This passage we read in 1 Corinthians 16 about our contribution is really about this, and we make it about our contribution, but it's really about this event that we're talking about right now, and churches cooperating all over the world to take care of the needy saints that were in Jerusalem, in that Judea, in that area, and all the various churches that Paul had been a part of, like across Galatia, that he mentions in 1 Corinthians 16, we're a part of this. And so cooperation to do benevolence. And as I'm talking about this, all I can think about right now is torch ministry and going down there and building houses for people, and 16 congregations being involved in doing that. That is cooperation and charity. So since it is clear early churches cooperated in charities and charity events, we are to be united by the cooperation of churches in our various charities. And this idea that, oh, well, we don't need to get involved in their charities and our charities, blah, blah. You know, some of that's kind of ridiculous, some of the arguments we make over that. Next, let's be united by the cooperation of churches in our commissions. We have been commissioned to do things. And I'll just read a couple of verses. Acts 9, verse 15 says, but the Lord said to him, go, for he's a chosen vessel of mine, talking about Saul, who would later be called Paul. Go, for he's a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel. That was going to be his mission. We find out in Acts 13 that they were sent out, him and Barnabas again. In Acts 14, he comes back and reports. That's the reason I've got that up there. And for 2 Corinthians 11, 89, he talks about how I robbed other churches to minister to you. So various churches supported his ministry that God had commissioned him. Same thing happened with the apostles. Same thing happened with prophets in the New Testament. Churches supported those works, often cooperatively together. More than one church would support a man in the field. And that would be the way that we got things done. Philippians, as you know, it says this. Now, you Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, no church shared with me concerning giving and receiving, but you only. So he only had one sponsoring church, if you will. For even in Thessalonica, you sent aid once and again for my necessities. So here's the truth. Mission work cannot be done unless we cooperate. One congregation cannot even take care generally of one man in the field. It's rare that one congregation can do that. But cooperatively, we can support a lot. As a congregation, we have supported people in Guyana, that's South America, in Africa, several places in Africa, Central America, which right now we kind of support someone in Panama, and some of the work that we were just talking about in Torch Missions. We supported work in Scotland. If you count up all the missionaries by all churches in all the world and what they're trying to do, there's 430,000 missionaries out there. 430,000. And they are all teaching the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. My point is simply this: that could not happen unless people were cooperating together. And that's all I'm trying to suggest to you, is there needs to be a spirit of cooperation when it comes to the idea of committing to the mission that we've been committed to do. So let's be clear about this. Early churches cooperated in their commissions that God had given them, and we need to be united by the cooperation of the church in our commissions. The last point I want you to see is this, and this one's one that's often kind of missed, so I want to nail this one down a little stronger. That's the reason I had him read this earlier. I'm not going to reread this passage to you, but let's be united by the cooperation of churches in our controversies. And listen to me, what I'm trying to suggest. When there is a controversy, it is incumbent upon, even if there's two brethren, listen to me, even if it's just between two brethren, it is incumbent upon the rest of us to help them fix that. So whenever there's a problem between a congregation or an issue, it is incumbent upon all of us to do all we can to help fix that. That is a church-wide problem. Congregations need to cooperate in resolving even doctrinal matters. By the way, that does happen. Acts chapter 6, we see it happening, right? When they asked them to resolve the problem in Acts chapter 6, they got the people from the Grecian background to pick the people who would take care of the widows that were being neglected in the daily ministration. We've had similar things. We've had lectureships on this kind of thing. We've had workshops on this kind of thing across the brotherhood. And we've had Q&A at things like Freed Hardeman have Q&A where they discuss problems that brethren were having. My preacher, when I was a kid, his name is Gus Nichols, and he went around to various congregations trying to help them resolve when the church is about to split. So that's a part of the responsibility of all of us to try to get these things resolved. Now, in this text that you read up there, which was read earlier, which is great, that's a text about Antioch receiving brethren from Jerusalem who were causing trouble in Antioch. So it isn't a case that the church at Jerusalem necessarily was the authority and everybody had to go get their permission to do what they did. It's that they had caused the problem and now they need to go to them to fix the problem. Do you understand what's happening here? So too many people going, oh, well, it was the apostles in Jerusalem that had the authority to fix this. No, it's two congregations having an issue with each other and they need to talk to each other about it. So they send them back along with other people we don't even have listed here, that's in your text, and to work this out. In Acts 15, 19 through 21, it says, therefore I judged that we should not trouble those from among the Gentiles who are turning to God. We don't need to create more problems for them, but that we write to them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from things strangled, and from blood. Those are the things that would give all the Jews who would want to be Christians in their assembly some problems eating with them. Verse 21, for Moses has had throughout many generations those who preach him in every city, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath. So they all know that stuff. So they travel from Antioch to Jerusalem. That's 300 miles. Listen to me. That's walking or riding a donkey or a horse for 300 miles. It's an average about 20 miles a day. That means it took right at 2 weeks to make the trip, just one direction, from Antioch to Jerusalem, just to solve a problem that brethren were having. Do you hear me? Just to solve a problem. In Acts 15, verses 23 through 24, it says, they wrote this letter to them, the apostles, the elders. Now listen to that. It wasn't the apostles' edict and everybody must listen to the apostles. That's not the case here. And everybody who's ever thought that's what it was, listen to what's being said in this text. The apostles, the elders. What does elders have a right to say anything? It's a congregation with a congregation. Are you following me now? This is not a church-wide thing that now you edicts coming down from the apostles. That's not really what's happening here. And don't make it more than it is. The apostles, the elders, and the brethren. What right did they have to speak? The whole congregation agreed with what was going on. Well, they don't have any right. It's only the apostles. No, you need to reread your Bible. This is a congregation to congregation problem to the brethren who are of the Gentiles in Antioch, Syria, and Cilicia. That's where the problem would be. So it's 3 different congregations at least were experiencing this same kind of thing. So greetings, since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you. Some of our brethren, our congregation, went over and stirred up trouble in your congregations, unsettling your soul, saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. We didn't send them to you, and we certainly didn't tell them to do that. That's how you solve problems, right? Acts 15, verses 30 and 31, it says, so when they were sent off, they came to Antioch, which is a 2-week trip, again, back. So they've been gone like a month. When they had gathered the multitude together, they delivered the letter, and when they read it, they rejoiced over it in encouragement. And then they went around and read the letter in the other congregations who got stirred up by it. That's Acts 16, verses 4 and 5, it says, and they went through the cities, they delivered to them the decrees to keep, which were determined by the apostles and elders at Jerusalem. So the churches were strengthened in the faith, increased in number daily. I'm just simply saying, don't miss this point. It's really important. One of the things we cooperate about is charity. One of the things we cooperate about is our commission to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And one of the things we cooperate about is when we know that there's a problem, we work together to solve those problems. That's individually, that's collectively, that's brotherhood-wide. That is our responsibility, and you need to understand it and receive it. That's for us all. So that's the lesson today. If we struggle to maintain unity within a single church, there's no wonder that we have a worldwide epidemic of a lack of unity and cooperation in it. No wonder. When one preacher or one church or one fellowship gains an upper hand in perceived perfection, is there any wonder we cannot be united in cooperation? Well, if our church is more perfect than somebody else's church, you see, why should we sully our hands in touching them or working with them? Charles Dillon, or Casey Stengel, I think's the way you say it, it's an American Baseball League guy. He's a fielder and a manager. He's best known for managing the New York Yankees in 1950s. Later expanded the New York Mets. His nickname was the Old Professor. You remember this guy? He's elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1966, and he said, listen to this, it's really good. He said this, it is easy to get good players. Getting them to play together, that's the hard part. When one preacher, listen to this again, or one church or one fellowship gains an upper hand in perceived perfection, is it any wonder that we cannot figure out a way to be cooperating with each other? J. Michael Shannon, a professor of preaching at Cincinnati Bible College in Cincinnati, Ohio, said this, and I won't read his whole quote, but he says, it has been well said that the man who holds the ladder at the bottom is about as important as the man at the top. When one preacher or one church or one fellowship gains an upper hand in perceived perfection, is it any wonder we cannot be united in cooperation? Charles Osgood told the story about two ladies. These two ladies were in a convalescent home. They had both experienced a stroke. Margaret, her stroke had affected her left side. So her left arm would not work. Y'all know about strokes. My father had a stroke. That's what killed him, actually, in the end. Margaret's stroke was on her left side. Ruth, her friend, stroke was on her right side. Right? Couldn't move his right arm. The director of the convalescent center got them to sit down. They had both been concert pianists, but they couldn't play anymore. What you going to do? So he got them to sit at a piano together and play pieces. One played with one hand and one played with the other. And they were a blessing to everybody around them, and they could play some of the most beautiful things together. I can't do everything, can you? I can't get it all right. Can you? But you know, if I could work with somebody that makes up for my bad parts, maybe we could learn to cooperate. Maybe we could just quit thinking we got it all sorted out and recognize I got a bad side too. What a picture of the church cooperation. That's internal brotherhood. That's external brotherhood. That's ecumenical, interdenominational thinking. And that's international cooperation. You say, well, I don't like any of that talk. There's the problem. See, it's our words. And then we think we know, and we never even look. When one preacher or one church or one fellowship gains an upper hand in perceived perfection, no cooperation is going to follow, is there? Why would I cooperate an inferior you? Why would you cooperate with an inferior me? Maybe our words, maybe our attitude needs to improve, right? Church cooperation. It is something we're called to. It is something that's essential, and we need to work at it. Do I know all the answers? No. If you come up to me today and says, I don't know if I agree with what you said, I probably agree with you. But we need to have a better spirit.